Hey, good morning, guys. We're getting ready to do Unit 4, Lesson 2. We're going to be focusing on the 5 methods to prove two triangles congruent. Again, so you should be going to your Section 2 notes at this point, and we'll go over the unit plan and make sure you guys understand what you're supposed to be doing, and then we'll get this thing started. Here's the notes on triangle congruence for Unit 2 and our Lesson 2 in Unit 4. I want to go ahead and see, Day 2. 5 methods of proving triangles congruent. Again, this video can be found on the YouTube channel at Disney Nerd Dad. And then there's also Khan Academy videos on the Xboxes in geometry congruence postulates, and then you can pick videos 1, 3, 5, and 6 to help out. Of course, here you'll see the workbook pages that go with that. As with before, I'll get you started, and then we'll be able to go over everything. So let's go ahead and get to the notes. Alright, so there are 5 ways that you can prove two triangles congruent if they indeed look similar or congruent. The first is completely by sides. And the rule here states that the 3 sides of one triangle must be congruent to the 3 sides of the other triangle. And so if I have triangle 1, and triangle 1 has 3 sides, then the other triangle must also have 3 sides that are labeled in the same order. If that occurs, then those two are congruent, and we say by side, side, side. Now, let's say that one of the triangles is flipped, and it still has the 3 sides. That triangle is also congruent to the first triangle by side, side, side. Okay, as long as the 3 sides are in the 1, 2, 3 order, or if it's two isosceles and one, two isosceles triangles, then they're congruent by side, side, side. The second method is side angle side. In side angle side, you must have 2 congruent sides, and then the angle that is included, or the angle that is in the middle of those 2 sides, must be congruent. And if that's true, then we say that these are congruent by side angle side. Now I want to show you something that happens here that sometimes gets confusing. The 1 and the 2 will flip to the other side, and the included angle will be over here. These 2 triangles are also congruent by side angle side. So again, if you have 2 sides and the angle in between, it's congruent by side angle side. You could also have angle side angle. For this case, we have to have 2 angles that are congruent in each triangle, and then the side in between. Notice how this keeps happening. If the word in the middle is the thing that we want in the middle of whatever we're proving. So up here, when it was side angle side, the angle was in the middle of the 2 sides. When it's angle side angle, the side is in the middle of 2 congruent angles. So these 2 triangles are congruent by angle side angle. Our last case that has to do with just angles and sides is where we have angle, angle, and then a side. Okay? And so I'm going to show you guys another example of this. If 2 angles are congruent and a side opposite one of the angles is congruent, and it must be the same side opposite of the same angle, then they are said to be congruent by angle, angle, side. Alright, so really important to notice. You can have 3 sides, you can have 2 sides and an angle, you can have 2 angles and a side, but you cannot have 2 sides and an angle outside. Okay, side angle does not happen. Okay, side angle is not a possibility. All right. Now, the 5th method that we have to prove 2 triangles congruent only works for right triangles, and that is hypotenuse leg. So when you check for hypotenuse leg, you often start by seeing, is it a right triangle? If it is a right triangle, then you look and see, does it have a congruent leg? And then you check and see, does it have a congruent hypotenuse? And in this case, they both have a congruent leg and a congruent hypotenuse. I want to show you one more thing. Let's say the congruent leg is here and the hypotenuse. That still works, because remember, we live in a three-dimensional world. As long as one leg is congruent to one leg of this triangle and the hypotenuses are congruent, they are congruent by hypotenuse leg. Okay, so again, 5 ways. Side, 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 angle, side, angle, 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 side, hypotenuse leg. The only way to really get into this is to practice it, so let's flip to the back. You're going to go ahead and need a compass for this part, because we're going to do some drawing here. And the first one we're going to do is we're going to do these two triangles. Now, the information that I'm going to give you is that this and this are right angles, and then these two sides are congruent. Now, obviously, based on the picture, they don't look congruent, but they are. So then we have to ask ourselves, how are we going to prove this congruent? Well, before we can prove two triangles congruent, we have to add the things that we know. The only thing that we know from this first picture is that these two angles are vertical, and therefore they are congruent. Okay? And so since those two angles are vertical and therefore congruent, we can now decide how these two triangles are congruent. And so let's look really carefully. We have angle, angle, and a side. And so we have an angle, angle, and a side. Or we could say angle, side, angle. That's the only two ways to prove them congruent when you have two angles and a side. So what we have to ask ourselves is this side in the middle of our two angles? It's not in the middle of our two angles. So these two triangles are congruent by angle, angle, side. Angle, angle, side. All right. Picture number 2. We're going to draw a triangle. And then we're going to split that triangle down the middle so that we now have two triangles. I'm going to tell you that this is congruent, and these two angles are congruent. So the question is, what can we find out? Well, here we only have an angle and an angle. So this is another important thing. Just like you can add vertical to a picture, and I want you to understand that that's one thing that you can add. You can always add a vertical angle if they're back to back. You can also add a reflexive third side. Do you see how this side works for both triangles? This is what we call reflexive. So, if these two triangles are back to back, and they are, we have angle, side, angle. And so again, this is, we're going to circle this and put over here. This is called reflexive. And so these are congruent by angle, side, angle. All right. Number 3, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to split it the same way, and the only thing I'm going to put in this picture is these two and this. So now I want to ask you to think about what you've been told about right triangles. What should we be checking for? We should be checking for hypotenuse leg. And so what we need to decide is, are the hypotenuses congruent? They are. Is there a leg congruent? Now, if you said no, that's fine, but then I want you to think about what we just did in number 2. Is this a reflexive third side? And it is. And since that's a reflexive third side, we go ahead and add to the picture. So again, this is a chance where we added reflexive. And so now we have a hypotenuse and a leg. So this triangle and this triangle are congruent by hypotenuse leg. Okay. Now we're going to do a square. And I'm just going to put a square up here. Kind of like a diamond, I guess. Then we're going to cut that diamond in half. And I know it's a square because I'm going to do this. Now, have I made any angles congruent in this picture? No. We know some are, because we could put right angles in the corners and we know that they're right angles if it's indeed a square. However, I want to talk about the easiest thing to do right now. And it comes back to what we've been talking about in problems 2 and 3. Again, you have a reflexive third side. You have a reflexive third side. This is the quickest way to prove it. So, if I have a reflexive third side, these two triangles are congruent by side, side, side. Okay, so we got it under control. Alright. Let's see, I've covered angle, angle, side, angle, hypotenuse, leg, and side, side, side. Let's go ahead and go to a side, angle, side example. And again, we're going to come back and we're going to visit this triangle right here. Same picture. And we're going to visit this one. Now, if this is a right angle, and that's fine, and I put this here, again, we're going to visit that whole idea of what do we add to the picture? We're going to add reflexive right there. And so again, when we add reflexive, this is side, angle, side. Let's do the same thing, but let's look at vertical. So I'm going to make an X, put a triangle, side, 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 side. What am I going to add here? I'm going to add vertical. Again, we're adding vertical. So how are these two triangles congruent? Well, in both of these cases, 5 and 6, it's side, angle, side, or side, angle, side. Alright, I want to talk about two things that can't happen so that you have a complete set of possibilities as you go into the workbook. For number 7, here's two things that can't happen. You cannot have angle, angle, angle. So if you see that, that's not possible. Okay, so the last situation here is why angle side side or side side angle doesn't work. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and just talk about. Here we go. Same thing. We'll do the little hourglass, and we have this side, and we have this side, and of course we have the vertical. The reason why this doesn't work is you're trying to get to a point where you can prove 3 sides congruent, and this angle matches up with that side, and this angle matches up with that side. So there's nothing that's added because of the fact that those two angles are congruent. Okay, and so these two triangles are not congruent. They are not congruent because, again, side angle is not possible. So again, the two things that aren't possible are angle, 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 or angle, side, or side angle. That's not possible. And again, it has to do with the fact that, like, you're trying to get to the point where you can establish the fact that 3 sides are congruent. And since these angles match up to a side that's already congruent, it's this side that we can't prove. And so therefore, there's no way to prove those two congruent. Last thing let's talk about is the assignment. And so I'm going to flip back to the assignment. And again, the assignment here starts on page 95, 1 through 12. And so let's go ahead and go to page 95. First thing we talk about is side, 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 and side angle side. And I'll go through question 1 through 3 with you so that we can understand how this works. But if we have triangle MGT, so MGT, it says what angle is included between GM and MT. So here's GM and here's MT. What angle is in between these two sides? Go ahead and answer that and then bring it up to check with me. Then number 2 says, bring up to check when you're done doing the whole assignment. Number 2 says, which sides include angle T? And we've talked about this before. When we have an angle is made up of 2 rays. Well, if T is here, and M is here, and G is here, then the 2 rays that make up this angle is TG and TM, as we talked about in chapter 1. And so instead of rays in this case, though, we have line segments. And so TG and TM are our 2 sides. Go ahead and answer angle question 3, what angles between GT and MG. You should be good to go. Now, 4 through 12. It says, are these going to be side, 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 or side angle side, or NEI? Well, it's as simple as looking at what information is in the picture. Here, I have side, side, and an angle. Is that side, 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 or side angle side? Here, I have side and an angle, and then I have what we've talked about, the reflexive third side. Is that side, 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 or side angle side? In number 6, I have 2 sides, and again, a reflexive third side. So, again, using that word reflexive. Is that side, 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 or side angle side? I want you to pause the video, answer 4, 5, and 6, and then I'll show you the answers, and then you'll finish 7 through 12. Number 4, side, side angle. And remember, we talked about on the notes, that's not possible. So this was NEI. Number 5, well, side, angle, side, because of the reflexive third side. So this is side, angle, side. Number 6, side, side, side. Again, because of the reflexive third side. Don't forget what vertical does. Vertical adds an angle. Go ahead and finish 7 through 12. I will tell you that there are 2 more NEI, 2 more side, angle, side, and 2 more side, side, side. When you're done with those, bring them up to check, and then we'll move on to the next one. And the next one was on page 99, I believe. Let's go check the notes real quick. Nope, page 101, 1 through 4. Which pair of triangles can be proven congruent by angle, side, angle? Again, follow the same rules, okay? And tell me which pair of triangles is angle, side, angle. You're going to have to add to the picture to make it work. And actually, if you want to show me like how all 4 of them relate, I'll go ahead and eliminate one answer. Here's vertical. So this is side, angle, side. So this one's not the answer. So if you want to go through and do that for all 4, that'd be great. Again, you're going 1 through 4. Then on page 113 is where we talk about hypotenuse leg. And so, you know, again, it's talking about the information that we need to prove hypotenuse leg true. So you're going to do 113, 1 through 4. When you're done with all of this, bring it to me to check, and we'll get you ready for Unit 3.